So next up, we're going to be creating a new container, a new section if you like, and we're going to use a new element called a flip box so that we can flip some of the different categories of case studies of websites that we have built for our clients in the past. And then underneath that, we're then going to start working with the loop carousel and the loop grid so that we can start displaying our case studies dynamically straight on this page. So lots and lots of stuff to get into. So first of all, let's now just create this section with the flip cards. So we want to create a new container with a horizontal flow. And then we, of course, want to come along and drag another container in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this 3 times. In fact, I'm not going to duplicate this 3 times because I'm going to specify a width of this container first. So let's select that inside container. Let's come along and make that full width. I'm now going to change this to pixels and I want this to be around 300. Let's see what it looks like with 300. So now we want to duplicate this now that we have done the sizing. So duplicate and then duplicate. And now what we want to do is, because we can see these are currently aligned to the left, what we want to do is come over to the top level container, change the justify content. Now we could move it to the center so that they're all aligned in the middle, but I think we could go with space evenly for this one. So we'll have equal spaces here, 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 and over at the end. So we can play around with it. It may look better when it is in the center, but we'll build this out first with this space evenly and see how it looks like once it's done. So let's get onto that now. So we want to now add in a flip card. So if we come to add element, if we just type in flip, we'll see the flip box here. So we're going to drag that in. Now this is an essential add-ons element, so this is only available with essential add-ons, and we can see as we hover over it, it flips over. So it's pretty cool. And what we want to do is we want to use 3 of these in fact. So one will be for our e-commerce, one will be for blogs, and one will be for services. So now we can start editing this design now. So let's do that now from the flip card content here. So what we can see, there's lots of different settings for you guys to play around with, but I'm going to go straight away and change that height to maybe 200. I think that's too high. Maybe 210. I'm happy with 210. Now under the content for the front side here, what I want to do is display an image. So we've got an icon there. We don't want an icon, so I'm going to turn that off. So we've got under here the content type. You can also use save templates if you wanted to, but we're going to be working with just a piece of content here. So what we want to do here is we want to give this a title. So let's change this title first of all to e-commerce. So this is going to be e-commerce. We're going to change that maybe to a H4. And I'm going to delete this content down here so that we don't have that content. Now, if we come down, we would obviously want to add a link to this. So we can create the link to the whole box, and then you would link to your e-commerce categories page. So we haven't currently designed that categories page yet. We've only created the single post templates for those case studies that has that category, if you remember. So we do need to go back and create an archive page, one for categories, one for blogs, and one for services. But that's not a problem. We would obviously just add the link to our e-commerce archive URL, and that would then link that to for our visitors to go back and see all of the case studies that are e-commerce. So let's carry on building this out. So what we want to do, we do want to add we can obviously change and edit the back here as well. So we may as well do that here before we come into the styling. So let's now select the content and the back here. We're going to hide the icon there. We're going to give this a background, a back title of build, let's say build, not build your next, let's say e-commerce store examples or case studies. And then under here where we've got our back content, let's go ahead and say see our previous e-commerce website builds. That is okay. And so we now see that when we hover over it. So now we can move on to the styling of this element. So let's come over to style. And we can see here now we can choose a background type for the front and the back. So for the background type for the front, let's go ahead and select classic. And we want to use an image here. So I've actually attached these images. You've got these 3 images here that we're going to use for this. Now, these aren't really relevant, but at the same time, you're not going to be using these images and text and everything in your own website anyway. This is just for demonstration purposes, right? So let's just work with these 3 images. I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to select. So now what we can do, we can change the position to center and the display size to to cover, so that it now looks like that on the front. So that is okay. Now, again, of course, that image isn't really relevant to e-commerce, but that isn't the point here, right? This is just this is just some experience working with this element, so you can see how it works and how you can then add it to your own websites for your own or your client websites. So that is looking much better now that we have that image on the front. So that is looking good. I would also change that size to maybe large, because I know that image was over 1,000 pixels. So that is fine. Now, if we come down to the background type, we're going to go ahead and select gradient for this one. So this is what we see when we when we hover over it. So let's change these to primary first color and second color as secondary. I'm also going to change that angle to 120 again, so it runs diagonally, and it is looking like that. So we are starting to get there. That is looking a lot better. We can also add some box shadow with a transition. That often looks quite cool, but we'll do that in fact, we can do that now. Let's take a look. In fact, no, we won't do this now. I'll show you how I would do that, and we're going to do that with under the advanced settings. But let's just go ahead and finish off the styling for this typography. So we can now, for the front title, we can see that is white. We could see how that would look maybe in accent. No, I think, again, of course, what you might want to do here is create an image on Canva, maybe add a background over the actual text so that that text stands out. Because as you can see, that text doesn't look great over that image. But as I said, that isn't the point of this course at all. You know, you've built websites before, or at least a website before, and you are now just learning some tips and tricks and how to use some of these more advanced features. So let's not worry about that. You would obviously want to do something when you come to styling that for yourself, for your own website. So let's now carry on with the typography. So let's change that to primary. I'm actually going to reduce that, or in fact, we could increase the boldness just so that it stands out a bit more. I'm going to leave that with a 700 bold. Size I'm going to leave as 1.8. That looks okay. I could make that 1.6. And then we don't actually have any content on this front card, so we don't need to worry about that. So let's now move on to the back. So the back is what we see there. Let's change that color to accent, typography for the title to primary. Let's maybe knock that down to a 1.4. That's looking better. And then if we come to the content, let's change that to in fact, I'm going to leave that as black, and then the typography will put as text, and then maybe make that a little bit smaller at 0.8. Now that says pixels, that is in fact rem. Not sure why that keeps showing as pixels, but that now looks like that. So that is looking a lot better. So now once we've added that link to that, then our visitors can click on that, and then they can go over to our e-commerce categories case studies page, so they only see e-commerce websites. So that is looking cool. I like the look of that. Let's now go ahead and duplicate that and make one for each of these other ones. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to come back here and paste, and come back here and paste. So now let's just quickly edit the front here. We're going to change that image, which is, in fact, let me just change this title first to blogs, or yeah, we'll leave that as blogs. We can change the back here to maybe blog, website case studies, see our previous blogs. eblogs. No. See our previous blogs that we have built. That is fine. We can come along to settings. We can change this image. We can use a different one now, maybe that one. We've got our background already there, and that is already taken care of. So again, I'm not going to waste time on the wording because that's kind of irrelevant. It's more just how we can use this, right? So let's now do the same with this last one. Let's come along to content. Let's change that front now to service websites or just services. Let's come back to back. Now we can change this to service or website case studies. See our previous service website builds. That is fine. Let's come along to style. Let's change this image on the front to this one. Select. And now it is looking like that. So that is already looking a lot better. A couple of things that I am going to do at this point. Let's come along to add element. And then we just want to drag a divider. So let's drag a divider into the section above, so into the container above, because I just want to add some kind of divide between these two different sections of the page. So what I'm going to do with this divider, let's go ahead and change the gap. So we want to make that to 0. Or we can leave it as 2. That's absolutely fine. Doesn't really make too much difference. So that it looks like that. Just so that it adds a bit of a divide on this actual page, right? So that we can see where it's moving from one to the next. So we are actually going to bring this page to life with some animations. We could actually start doing that now. So let's actually do that with the divider here. So let's come along to advanced. Let's come along to motion effects. Let's come along to entrance animations. And then we can do a slide in left. So that it slides in like that. That looks pretty cool. Let's make that slow so that it slowly slides in like that. So I'm happy with that. That looks pretty cool. We could also do the same with the text here. So let's go ahead and select that heading in the section above. So let's come along to advanced. Let's come to motion effects and then animation, entrance animation. Let's go ahead and do, maybe we'll do a fade in left for this one. Fade in left. And then slide in left. So let's go ahead and let's just see how this looks. So we can go ahead now and preview changes. So we can see that it looks pretty cool how that all slides in. So that is looking a lot better now. I'm liking that. We've got these cool little tiles here that flip as we hover over them. These are each going to be linked to the own category pages. In the next section, we're going to carry on building out the page and we're going to start playing around with some loop carousels. So lots and lots of buzz around these elements when they were first introduced because it gives us so much control over our website with the use of single custom posts and all of these custom fields that we're going to be using. So really excited to get into the new element and we will see you in the next lesson.